How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Before we get it rolling here, I just had a quick disclaimer that I had to throw in the beginning. The first segment here is filmed with my good friend Hank, PR52 on YouTube, and we kind of talk about the Eagles and where we think they're going in the future, the whole debacle in the Week 17 and all that. However, it was filmed before the news broke about Doug Peterson being fired. I thought about if I could still use the footage or not, but we explore the avenue of if he does get fired and what we think will happen. So I think a lot of the content is still worth putting in there, but I didn't want to throw it in there because there's a lot of speculation on if he's gonna, and it was recorded before he actually was. But I hope you still enjoy the rest of it. And at the end, we give our divisional round picks for the NFL playoffs. So I just want to throw that in there so everybody knew. Hope you still enjoy the episode. Thanks for clicking on and enjoy. Now, I have Hank, PR52 from YouTube, joining me today. He's walking his dog Waffles as we talk today. He's enjoying the California sun, or I don't know, it might be sunny out there. I always assume it is. But we're going to talk some Eagles football for the first half of this. And, it's always nice to talk to a fellow Eagles fan. We've both given our rants separately, but I think it'd be good to talk some stuff out. So first off, Hank, how are you? Good to see you and hear from you. I don't think you've been on for about a year on my show, so I'm glad I can get you back on.
Yeah, of course. No, I wish it was sunny. I think it was kind of sunny today, but I live near the coast, so that the sun doesn't hit here as often. But yeah, it's good to be on, definitely.
Believe it or not, it is 50 degrees here in Florida right now. That's going to shock a lot of people, but it's about as cold as it gets for us. So
I'd say it's about low 60s, high 50s right now.
Right on. So we've both kind of talked about this. We'll jump right into it separately on your show that we'll talk about, Hank's new show that he's launched recently. But on the last episode, I was doing wild card picks with Nick, and Robert Deiters jumped on. But I had to get my opinion out about everything that happened in Week 17 against the Washington football team. And I think we agree on our stance on this. I don't think anything that happened in Week 17, benching Jalen Hurts, had anything to do with sticking it to the Giants. I think anyone that thought it was, to get back at the Giants, to me, it makes no sense because what do we care if they make the playoffs and get knocked out in the first round? So the whole Giants part of it was ludicrous to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really do anything to us but beat us. And I mean, they didn't even really beat us in like even a way in which you would want to stick it to. Like, if they like ran the score up on us or something like that, or did something cheap, they didn't even do that to us. I mean, it's just didn't owe them anything. We had a plan, or apparently we had a plan, and we decided to execute on that plan. And whether you like it or not, which again, I admitted that the way we went about it was extremely scummy.
Yeah.
Especially to a lot of the players on the team, because you could see how dejected some of those players were. Even if it was the plan, I don't think they expected to carry out that plan down by 3. I think that with the players we had out and with the fact that the Washington football team controlled their own destiny, I think that, the thought process was we're going to be down by like 10 or 14 points.
Right.
And it really did look like that at the beginning. But then we actually took the lead. And I remember saying during the game, man, this isn't part of the plan. This can't be part of the plan. We shouldn't be winning 14-10. But then, I think that it was just a situation where Doug decided to stick with the plan, even if he really didn't have to.
I think if it was a plan, and it had to have been something discussed, at least between Howie and Doug, I don't think it's something the players truly knew, because we've seen plenty of stories now of guys kind of taking exception to it. Another narrative I don't really care for is obviously the benching for Nate Sudfeld. You can feel how you want, but this narrative that Jalen Hurts was having like this game of his life, and how could you pull the guy in this situation? The guy had less than 80 yards passing through 3 quarters of football. I understand he ran for 2 touchdowns, but let's not act like this guy was, having the game of his life when he got pulled. He was struggling as well.
Oh, he wasn't having the game of his life, and he was struggling. But I think that one of the reasons why people have a lot of red flags pop up is because of the fact that usually you pull a guy if they're having that kind of game and you're down by like 4 touchdowns,
Right.
which we weren't. We were down by 3 points. But I think a lot of people who are giving like Nate Sudfeld garbage for this is, I mean, we know what we have in Nate Sudfeld. He's not a good quarterback. I
Right.
mean, he can't really control that. But conventional wisdom says you don't bench a guy when you're down by 3 points. And it really is Doug Peterson's fault that we were down by 3 points, because we could have kicked a field goal and we would have been tied 17-all.
Right. I understand. I look at it almost the way the Dolphins situation with Tua. Anytime, Tua got in a hole, they would just bench him for Fitzpatrick. And eventually you deal with you have to leave this guy in and see how he's going to respond to a situation. And I could see the argument of, all right, we're in a dogfight here. Let's see if Jalen Hurts can, pull us out. And this might not be something just to see if he's even capable of doing, not that like this will prove that he's our guy moving forward next year or anything. So I definitely see the wisdom, the conventional wisdom behind that. But I remember, I think it was during the first game that Hurts played, like that he started, I guess, against the Saints, and we did end up winning that game. But I remember texting you and I said, I think we can both agree that Jalen Hurts isn't the future, right? And because I'm convinced on that. You were a little bit more lenient than me. You said, wait and see attitude. But I mean, I know it's a small sample size, and I'm not trying to push this guy into a corner, but like, I don't think we go into next year thinking we have our guy if he's the one starting. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I still have a lot of question marks. I don't know if he's the guy, just because of the fact that, he's a rookie and still made rookie mistakes, and he wasn't slated to be the guy. So it's not really fair to him to just come out and say, yo, he's the guy because he played better, which, to throw all the stats out, because, he definitely looked more comfortable playing football all season than Carson Wentz did.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a small sample size, and the guy could regress further. You never know. You never know if a guy like that can have. They always talk about, them getting figured out, players getting figured out. And it's all types of quarterbacks getting figured out. It's not just the running quarterbacks, which
Right.
Jalen Hurts is more of a running quarterback. But I think that a quarterback competition during an off season, if Carson Wentz is still here and if Jalen Hurts is still here, we don't know if one of them is going to get traded, or maybe even both of them are going to get traded. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the best option, and while I wasn't in favor of it back then, I think the best option is kind of like what Chip Kelly did with Foles and Vic, a quarterback, kind of like a preseason quarterback battle just to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a battle that Carson Wentz is probably going to win.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Jalen Hurts is out of the running, because we even saw with that situation, most people expected Michael Vick to win that quarterback competition, but Nick Foles was the better quarterback that season.
Yeah, he wouldn't go away in the preseason, and he ended up winning the job from Vic. And I agree with you. If this ends up being, if they're both on the roster next year and it comes down to who has a better camp, I know Carson struggled this year, leading the league in interceptions and everything, but I could not imagine Hurts having a better preseason camp than Carson Wentz. I think overall his talent is still better. And me and you are similar in just because a guy has a bad year doesn't mean you hate the player now. I mean, these guys have contributed to the team that we love. Hurts a short time, Wentz, a big part of the Super Bowl run. We both agree with that. We're not someone that has to pick between Foles and Wentz. It annoys me when people do that. But I think if it's coming down to a preseason battle, it goes to Carson Wentz, which leads me to there's been stories out there. We don't know how true they are that he's asked for a trade or wants out or thinks that his relationship with Doug Peterson is, unrepairable. If you had to bet one way or the other, do you think Carson is here next year, or do you think he moves on?
There's a situation with me where there's a difference between whether I hope and whether I want.
Okay.
Now, if Doug Peterson is here next year, no matter who our offensive coordinator is, he's not going to fix Carson Wentz. I don't think that Doug Peterson is a coach that can fix anybody. I don't have very much confidence. I have more confidence in Carson Wentz right now than I do Doug Peterson.
Okay.
But again, that kind of fits against as my like confirmation bias against coaches, right? I have a long history of hating on Eagles coaches.
Right.
But the thing is that I think that Carson Wentz can get salvaged if he goes somewhere else. And I feel like if he goes to a place where a coach can develop him, like Indianapolis, like Pittsburgh, there are probably a bunch of other ones too. I just can't think of them at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe New Orleans. Then that's a situation where he could flourish more with a good coach. With the Eagles, I just don't see that right now. At this point, the Eagles are in flux. They know that they have a bad head coach. We don't know who our offensive coordinator is going to be. We don't know who our defensive coordinator is going to be. And at a certain standpoint, I think that a lot of these coordinators are going to look at the Eagles and they're going to say to themselves, yeah, this is not a place I want to be, just because of the fact that the head coach doesn't have very much stability. He could get fired, and that means I might have to go somewhere else. Especially these defensive coordinators, and I know we might talk about that in a sec, but
Yep.
a lot of these, even offensive coordinators, a lot of these guys only get one chance to succeed. So why would you go to a team where you're just not going, you're probably going to leave the next season, and you may never become an offensive coordinator again. You may never become a defensive coordinator again. You might have zero chance at being a head coach. So this is the purest reason why I just think that the team is just like, no offense to them, just a cesspool of nothing good going to happen. I
Right.
think the only reason why Howie Roseman brings in an offensive coordinator is if he's like, hey, if you come here and we fire Doug after he has a bad season, then we might give you the job.
Right.
I think that's the only thing that you could possibly think of. But I mean, last year no offensive coordinator wanted to come here. And that was with prime Carson Wentz. That was with Carson Wentz, who, against all the odds with practice squad players, just came back from a 5-7 record to a 9-7 record. Like we were looking pretty dandy there at the 4th seed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we spoke, I think, was at the end of the Eagles season last year, and we were feeling pretty good about the fact that Carson Wentz could bring this practice squad level team to the playoffs, with the 9-7 record and everything. And you're right, even with then, there was no offensive coordinator wanted to step up and take that job. You mentioned places that Carson Wentz could potentially go. You mentioned Pittsburgh. I would hate to see that, but I totally get why that's a viable option. And on my last episode, I mentioned that, to me, if I could pick for him, it would be the Colts, because they have the cap for the contract and they have the connection with Frank Reich. We may have seen Phillip Rivers play his last football game as we record this earlier in the day. So they would have the opening. So if that does in fact happen, I would like to see him do that. It really comes down to, do the Eagles want to get rid of the coach and find someone that can make that relationship with Carson Wentz? Or if they feel that they can save Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, move on from Carson Wentz and find a quarterback that he will get along with longer term. I think it's much easier to find a head coach that'll work well with Carson Wentz than to find a quarterback that'll work with Doug Peterson. I think that's much easier of a plan. What do you think?
And according to the reports, it's saying that the Eagles want Howie, Doug, and Carson Wentz back. And if I can just quickly touch on the reports about Carson Wentz and how he's absolutely just been drugged through the mud.
Yeah.
And being called a bad teammate and being called a crybaby for the past 3 weeks, when he hasn't even come out and said any of that stuff. He has been nothing but a good soldier throughout all of this, right? People are talking about how he's got an ego. I'm sure he's got a little bit of an ego. I'm sure he doesn't want to, he's not happy being the backup. But like Carson Wentz, like he's a man of God. Like he's the guy who always says, I don't care. Like, this is my path. This is the path that the Almighty has chosen for me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it doesn't even fit with his character. So you're really kind of thinking about who is putting out all of these reports. And I agree that, you know, it's probably more difficult to salvage the head coaching position than it is to salvage the quarterback position. But I really do believe that if we get a new head coach, he's probably going to want his own quarterback. You know, so it's just a mess. A mess that we've created.
I mean, it is possible there's a coach out there that says, yeah, I think I can work with Carson Wentz and get it to go. But yeah, the whole story about, you know, Carson's not happy of being a backup quarterback. I don't think any quarterback that was once a starter would be happy to be a backup. I mean, you heard Ryan Fitzpatrick, of all people, you know, be bummed that he was benched for Tua. When Tyrod Taylor lost his job, I'm sure he wasn't happy about it either. If you're a starting quarterback at any point, you're not happy when you're no longer the starter. So when I heard that story, to me, it wasn't really a story, because who would be, oh, thank God I'm the backup now. That's a lot better off for me. That's where I want to be. Nobody in the NFL would say that at any position. There's been a lot of talk about Carson being back and stuff. And one story that's popped up only to me, it happened in the middle of the Washington game. I hadn't really heard much about this until the middle of it, and it's only escalated. There's now reason to believe that Zach Ertz will not be returning, and he had a pretty heartfelt speech in a post-game conference or whatever. Got very emotional, saying, you know, he loves Philadelphia and he doesn't want to be anywhere else. I don't think it's a matter of him retiring. It's just the notion that maybe they're not going to re-sign him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if people look at Carson Wentz being a guy who's kind of made a plunge this season when it's come to what he's been able to do. Like, again, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Statistically, probably the worst quarterback in the NFL, besides maybe like Dwayne Haskins or something like that. But Zach Ertz has been one of the worst tight ends in the National Football League. And a lot of people had him like pinned to be like a Pro Bowler on the cusp of being an all pro. Of course, he's probably not as good as Kittle or Waller or Kelsey. But I think the Eagles really are looking at his contract being a 1-year contract and saying to themselves, like, if we're trying to like get rid of cap space, which the Eagles are probably the second worst team when it comes to cap space, they're probably going to have to move on with Zach Ertz. And it really sucks because he is a talented player. But there was a report, and I'm not sure if it's true. There was a report that even before week 1, Zach Ertz was unhappy with the fact that he wasn't getting like George Kittle caliber money. And, you know, he really mailed it in this season. I mean, he just plain and simply was not good, you know?
I mean, yeah, it's hard to find someone that was good on this team consistently throughout the whole year. If Zach Ertz doesn't play another game for the Eagles, he will always be an Eagles legend for his Super Bowl performance alone. But I mean, maybe it's also the fact that Dallas Goedert seems to be coming along and they can see making that transition from Ertz to Goddard the way we did from Selleck to Ertz. So we've been pretty fortunate to have above average to great tight end for the past decade, really, between these three guys. So that could be a part of it too. Yeah, maybe it's possible that he mailed it in a bit this year, but I don't think that's the only player you could say that about.
Oh, no, you can't. But I think that I think that a portion of the reason why he mailed it in so much was because of his contract and him being upset about the fact that he's not getting paid this big the money that a tight end of his caliber or his past caliber for the past 3 seasons has been getting. And, I can see him being unhappy about that, of course. But at the end of the day, I think that parting ways with him is the best thing for him and the best thing for us because, a lot of people will say that any draft pick we trade him for is a waste, but you never know because the draft is such a crapshoot. But I think that he would flourish on a team that is well coached and has a good quarterback, or has a better quarterback who's been playing better than Carson Wentz has. So, it's just one of those sad things in the NFL that unfortunately we have a salary cap and we have, the ability to trade a guy. A lot of people will crucify the front office for parting ways with guys like Reggie White and guys like Brian Dawkins, but they didn't decline as much in one season as Zach Ertz did. Yeah. And I think that there's a real chance that you can get a second-round pick for Zach Ertz to help you out in the future.
I mean, you do have to question, is it a decline? Is it a down year? Because it could be either. Like, there is a version of this where he, bounces back. I don't know if it's on the Eagles, but if let's say he went somewhere else, somewhere that, is a tight end away from being a contender, and, he's a Pro Bowl caliber tight end again, would not shock me in the least. I think going into the year, you mentioned, Kittle and Kelsey, and I would have maybe put Zach Ertz at third. Obviously, Waller came out of nowhere. He's easily a top 5 tight end this year. Yeah. But going into the year, he wasn't someone that we knew until that Monday night game, really. But I still think maybe he doesn't have the caliber of a top 5 tight end, but I think, he could bounce into a top 10 tight end with the right system next year or anything. But
yeah, it would be interesting. And I'm not necessarily saying that he's declining, definitely, but he's definitely declining on our team. Yeah. So when you have a guy who has a lot of talent, has a lot of skills, and has a high ceiling, that they're not playing well on your team, you better find a way to get rid of them to somewhere else so you can get some draft picks for them.
Yeah.
And it works for us because we don't have cap space this year. So, and if he wants a lot of money, I don't think it's going to be on this team with this coaching staff. I don't. Yeah. And luckily we do have a successor, so it's not like we have nobody.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, he might end up being a cap casualty, and like I said, it's not the first time that's happened. You mentioned guys that we've let go of, legends, Dawkins, White, just to name a few, like you had said. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens. But to me, that was a relatively newer story. I'm sure that's something that's been going, but they really hammered it home in the Washington game, maybe because it was just so boring and they wanted to talk about something else. And there was the whole, he stayed on the field for an hour after the game, and that whole story that, made it kind of emotional for everybody else. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, him, Wentz, and Kelsey all did it. Yeah. They stood there. And again, there's a situation where we don't know if those 3 are going to be on this team. We just don't.
Yeah,
I would, and I mean, I don't know if Kelsey's salvageable with draft picks just because of all the wear on his body and him being the second senior most player on the team. But I don't know. This is just a situation where, a lot of people in the past have kind of looked to me for answers. I don't really have any answers here.
Yeah.
I've got no answers because this is uncharted territory for me. I've never seen this happen before. I've seen bad seasons, but I've never seen a bad season, bad salary cap, bad coach. They're keeping the coaches, or the head coach at least. They're keeping the GM. They might be keeping the quarterback who hasn't been playing well. We have another quarterback who played well at the end of the season, but we don't know. It's a situation where there's just so many question marks.
Yeah. You're right. We've been through bad seasons. I mean, we were here for when Sam Bradford was our quarterback. We've seen some dark times, but we typically know the direction. And this is one of the few times in our lifetimes and our fanhood that we don't know the direction of the team at all. And part of that has only been added to, it was either today or yesterday. I forget when it officially came out. We touched on offensive coordinators earlier. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz has officially parted ways with the team. I don't know if he's officially retiring or just severing his tie with the Eagles, but that leads to a whole other question on who the defensive coordinator will be going into next year.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of like Terrell Austin, who's a secondary coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, being someone who could be that guy. A lot of these defensive coordinators are going to other teams, or it's the promoting from within, the Matt Burke, which I'm just going to tell you this. I know you live in Florida and you probably know about Matt Burke being the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator for a few years. If Matt Burke is our defensive coordinator, that's a sign that no defensive coordinator wants to come here.
Yeah.
And they just want nothing to do with us. Because, again, they know that if I become a defensive coordinator on this team, then there's no way that I'm going to be a head coach somewhere else, or there's no way I'm going to be a defensive coordinator somewhere else either. Possibility, Chris Richard, he would run a 4-3 defense. I know that it would be great to stick it to Dallas. But again, I don't think I'm really that knowledgeable about defensive coordinators. I think I probably know more about offensive coordinators. It would be great to get a guy like Graham Harrell, USC offensive coordinator, who did some great things with a couple of quarterbacks at USC with Keaton Slovis. I think that's the USC quarterback. But I don't really have what you would say is like a 100% of a, this is definitely going to happen at defensive coordinator. I don't really have that much confidence that we're going to get somebody good. I think that we're probably going to hire from within. At offensive coordinator, we're probably going to hire Press Taylor or Deuce Staley. And they're just going to clean house when we have another bad year.
Yeah.
This team, unfortunately, is just being set up for failure, and there's really nothing that they can do about that. Now, to me, the only way in which we get somebody good is if they get promised the play calling duties, or if a guy like Andy Reid, for instance, puts a good word in.
Yeah.
Where like he says something like, "Oh, you should be the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. They're a great organization, blah, blah, blah," even though I don't really mean that.
Yeah.
You
mentioned hiring from within. If things end up happening with Doug Peterson, and it's the common theme of like, okay, if somebody's gone, who would actually take this job? I think it's a real possibility, a realer possibility than in years past, that Deuce Staley does officially get. I think he interviewed last time after the Chip Kelly situation. He was upgraded to assistant head coach, which is essentially a Dwight Schrute position, I'm pretty sure. But if
yes,
the
assistant to the assistant of the regional manager.
Right, exactly. So that's the way I've looked at it. And I love Deuce Staley. He's done just about everything within the organization that you can think of. I don't think it's ludicrous to think that if Doug goes elsewhere and they don't have that home run coach, that, we might be looking at him as the next head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be looking at him for a possible interim. I think this could be a situation, kind of like who's the defensive coordinator for the Bills? Leslie. He was like a cornerbacks coach here. He was the Vikings head coach
Frazier,
at one
right?
point.
Leslie
Frazier, former Chicago Bear. It could be a situation like that. but that stuff doesn't usually work out. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I would like to see Deuce Staley as an offensive coordinator first
Mm-hmm.
before I even look at him as a head coach. And I know that's kind of unfair to say because we've had a head coach that never called the plays. And one of the biggest things that people oftentimes mistake, the common misconception, is that you need to be able to call plays to be a coach. And that's not true.
Yeah, not necessarily.
That's not necessarily true. Some of the best play callers have made terrible coaches.
Yep.
Pat Shurmur being one of those guys who just been a terrible head coach, but he's been a pretty good play caller. But I would just like to see how he is at offensive coordinator first before I make a decision on that. But I think that there's a situation where no matter what happens, I think we're going to end up parting ways with Deuce Staley after next season. I just don't see him here. It's just the parity of the NFL. I think if we don't make him an offensive coordinator, someone's eventually going to come out and swoop him up.
Yeah.
I think that could be possibly something that happens this offseason, unless he gets blocked.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if we can block him.
Yeah, I don't really know that whole process. Sometimes you always hear about, oh, this team got permission to interview such and such. I don't know when you have to ask for permission and when you don't. So yeah, that's definitely a question mark. There's a bunch of different styles of head coaches, but you can break them into two categories: coaches that let their coordinators call plays, and then the ones that don't. So Doug has, for the longest time been one that doesn't. So I could see, needing the difference with that. Moving forward, that he might, if he wants to save his job, he might have to get some good coordinators in there and let them actually do what they do. But that remains to be seen. We mentioned the whole Washington thing, and why we did what we did is essentially gets you the 6th pick. Have you given any thought to who you would even want the Eagles to take with the 6th pick now that we have it?
I've gone back and forth. I know Eagles fans really want a receiver.
Yeah.
And if it would be very difficult to not pick one of either Chase from LSU or Devontae Smith from Alabama, who was the Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
It would be very difficult to not pick one of those guys. And I know for a fact I'm going to stay off Twitter during the draft because it's just going to suck if we don't pick one of those guys, just the fans' reactions to that. But the fact of the matter is that I look at the Lions of the beginning of the early 2000s. We all remember they picked back-to-back receivers 3 times, or what was it? Carlos Rogers. They got Roy Williams and one other guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all gone. They hit on 1 out of 3 of those guys. And if we just become a team that keeps drafting receivers, then it's just going to be it's just not going to be good. Because again, Doug Peterson's our head coach. I don't necessarily think it's fair to say that Jalen Reagor sucks after what is 1 season of being a receiver under Doug Peterson. I don't see that that's necessarily fair because he didn't even really use him right. He wanted him and didn't use him right, according to the reports. If Penei Sewell, if he's there, you pick him. Because I'm a big proponent of building the offensive line and defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, we might have a lot of extra players on the offensive line, but we've had offensive line injuries for years now, and the depth just hasn't been there. So why not try to groom this guy at tackle or guard? A lot of people are looking at Patrick Surtain. Some people are certain on Patrick Surtain, Alabama corner, right?
Yeah, corner. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a possibility. I'm not a big fan of drafting a cornerback in the first round.
Same.
But again, if we have a guy like Terrell Austin as our defensive coordinator, then that's a guy we definitely would look at. Again, like every time we try to draft a skill player, they end up playing like crap for us, whether they're on the offensive line or the defensive line. I think the one place you don't go, no matter what, the one place you don't go is quarterback.
Yeah,
Don't
definitely
draft a
not.
quarterback in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just a waste of time. I think a lot of people are making up stories about how we're going to draft a quarterback in the first round. I think that's just a waste. You just don't do that. Not when you already have two quarterbacks ahead. You do that, you just play quarterback musical chairs, and eventually that guy's going to be out after the fans just boo the guy into oblivion. I'm more of draft an O lineman or D lineman, but I mean, if you want to go ahead and draft the best player available, who better to draft than two of the best wide receivers in college football last year? So, and drafting both of them really stops them from going to a team like the Giants, who are a team that are sitting right there licking their chops to get a wide receiver because they believe that a wide receiver is going to fix their team.
Yeah.
So do you play for your strengths? Do you play to screw over other teams like Dallas did to us last year? I don't know. But one thing that I know for sure is don't draft a quarterback, don't draft a running back. But if Penei Sewell is there, you have to draft him. You have to draft him. It's a must. Because again, you got to build your team from the lines. And it's one of the reasons why the Washington football team has been so good, because they built their defensive line in the past 4 drafts. It's all defensive line. And that's why, they're too hot to handle.
Yeah, I mean, I it's never a bad thing if you can get that stud offensive lineman or defensive lineman in the first round. I agree with the receiver thing. We need that star receiver, and we've whiffed on so many. I mean, we passed on DK Metcalf. It's well documented. We didn't get CeeDee Lamb when we could have. So if we can get a guy like Devontae Smith, that the Heisman Trophy winner, that Alabama's had a good track record of receivers in recent years, I can't be mad at that either. So it would be hard for me to not want to go that route to actually finally hit a home run on one of these receivers. So hopefully if we don't go O-line or D-line, that's the guy I'd want to see. Hank, it looks like it's getting kind of dark where you are, so I'm going to let you go here in a minute. Real quick, though, let us know about Throwing Snowballs, your new podcast you've launched.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so I've been doing stuff at Two Birds and a Third. It was a pet project that Josh, DJ, and we've been trying to, we tried to do for years, ever since I met them watching football on Sundays. We picked up Ricky along the way, and obviously it's not one of those things where, I have a lot of time to record at night, which works for all 3 of them. So I haven't really spent as much time there. So I just decided, let me just do this. Mm-hmm. Let me just try to do this and, work at it and see where it goes. And I remember I conversed with you about the name, because I was like, what am I going to call it? Because I want it to be something that it's like a football innuendo or a Philadelphia Eagles innuendo. And you were like, why not Throwing Snowballs at Santa? And I was like, that's a great idea, but I might want to take away the Santa part, because that might insult a lot of people. But it's basically, me trying to embrace, being an Eagles fan, and, all the baggage that it takes to being an Eagles fan. And, I can sit there and I can edit it to my leisure and put out a couple of shorts when I want to, when I wasn't able to do that with Two Birds and a Third. So it's just kind of like a way for me to get things out instead of, sitting there on Facebook and ranting incoherently for hours on end. So Just get it out there, kind of like a journal, and just let it be.
It's definitely easier. Like you can feel, you feel a certain way. You get the emotions flowing about any sports topic. When you have to sit down and put it in a coherent message, it really helps you, work through a lot of things. That's something I've noticed since I've done this show. You mentioned how I, had a hand in helping you name the show. I've helped a couple other friends name theirs. It's funny how good I can be at that when my show has the most generic name out there. But at least I'm able to help other people with some cool names. So.
I had a good chuckle with us. What is it? Stadia or stadium judge or something like that,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Stadium jail cell.
That could have been a good one
You're
too.
sitting in the stadium dunk tank with PR52.
Yeah. But for those that haven't heard it, I think you're 2 episodes in now. Definitely go check it out. PR5210 is the Twitter page, if I have that right, where you can find the episodes. And Hank, thank you for coming on here, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Good luck with the new show, man. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, man. You too. Have a nice day, and have a good rest of your weekend.
You too. Everyone stick around for a minute. Myself, Nick Rice, and Robert Dieters will be predicting the divisional round of the playoffs coming up next. Okay, and we're back. About time to pick the divisional round of the NFL playoffs after a super fun wild card weekend. I got with me, same as last week, I got Nick joining us on the show, as well as Robert Dieters out of Reno, Nevada. I recently learned how to say that word correctly. So Rob is very hyped about it. Guys, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed wild card weekend as much as I did.
I sure did. I'm a little bummed that these games aren't broadcast on Nickelodeon. I think we were anticipating this, but it was a wild success for Super Bowl wildcard weekend. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to maybe next year we do the same thing with Nick.
Yeah, divisional round was very exciting. I was proved wrong a lot in this divisional round, but hopefully, not the divisional round, the wild card round, but hopefully divisional round, I will prove myself right. I'm trying to go 4-0. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll get right into it. I do want to say one thing about Wild Card Weekend. I don't know about you guys, but I'm spoiled now with these 6 games instead of the usual 4. It's like eating a double stuffed Oreo. You can't go back to the original Oreos. It's just not enough anymore. So I don't know if we're going to get 6 games next year, but fingers crossed, because that was a lot of fun, a lot of good football, a lot of good upsets. We'll kind of talk about as we get into the new games. Rob's got his his Tom Brady jersey on after picking against the man last week, I believe. So and speaking of jerseys, Nick, congratulations for calling your shot with your boy winning Rookie of the Year after wearing his jersey on the last episode.
Well, that's why you tune in to the Phil Talk Sports and all of his other podcasts, because that's what you get here. You get to know what's happening before it happens. And, just a spoiler, we're going to try and predict more stuff in just a second.
You're right. We're going to do our best to predict. A real quick rundown of our standings so far. Nick leads the pack at 5-1, only tripped up on that Cleveland game, but let's be honest, you can't blame him for that because nobody saw – you might have had the Browns winning, but nobody had it going the way that it ended up shaking out. I'm in the middle there with 4-2, and Rob's sitting at 500, 3-3, but he just said he's going 4-0 this week, so he'll be fine after this. We'll jump right into it. Rob, you can kick us off. We're doing the LA Rams at Green Bay Packers. The 4:35 start on Saturday. Who do you got?
So with the Rams, we got to see an NFC West battle between the Rams and the Seahawks. Rams were on the road. QB controversy, but Jared Goff was injured, the thumb. But he came into the game, and as I said in my prediction, if he did play, they were going to win that game. I was a little nervous with the thumb. He only went 9-19, passing 155 yards, but did get the touchdown pass to solidify the win against Seattle. With the Rams, you go back to their 2018 campaign. They went to the Super Bowl. They went against the Patriots. They lost. But that team did not look as good as what we're looking at right now. Aaron Donald also got hurt in that game against Seattle, and he is questionable right now with the ribs. If Donald is going to play in this game and Goff's thumb does get better, which you can't really blame the guy. He just came off surgery. His thumb, I heard it was a little swollen after the game, but hopefully that does change. You saw Wolford come out with a bad neck injury.
Yeah.
And an interesting stat line, Sean McVay is 37-0 when he leads at halftime. I think that's going to be a tough task to take. Going to Green Bay, we look at an MVP type of team. We go to Aaron Rodgers. I think possibly this could be one of his last seasons trying to get to that Super Bowl run. This is such a great team. Aaron Jones has looked great all season, but the only concern I have with that offense is Devontae Adams. If he goes down, I don't think they really have that great of a wide receiver core. I think that team struggles in that type of sense, and they can run that football, but Sean McVay, they have that defense. They keep it strong, and they get a pick six and bring it to the house again like they did against Seattle. I think they get the win, but my prediction is going to be 27-20 Green Bay. I want the Rams to win, but with Jared Goff being questionable with this injury and only went 9-19 passing, he has to be able to throw this football. And I don't think it's just going to be possible going into Green Bay, him throwing that much.
Nick, go ahead.
All right. I don't know about you guys. When I was a high school football player, I know, I can't believe you guys didn't know this before. It was everywhere. I fractured my middle finger catching a pass. And it was during the time of year, kind of like now, when it was just really cold, and every day you remember you have a fractured finger. Like it's 50 outside, and when it's raining and the wind's blowing sideways, you feel it. And no matter how much painkiller you put in it, it's just not going to help. Oh, but only so much. And that's the case with Jared Goff. I'm sure he's going to come out there on Saturday afternoon, 33 degrees. It's supposed to snow at Lambeau Field, and he's going to feel that every time he throws the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredible win last week against Seattle. I don't see the Rams doing much offensively in this game. I have Green Bay winning 30-13.
Ooh.
Because I just do not believe. And I was the one, just like Rob, picked the St. Louis or the LA Rams. Jeez. First mistake of that on the day. I thought it'd be last week with Washington. Turns out we all cleared that hurdle last week. I think the Rams don't come close in this game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think if you, the Rams can feel good about, getting past the Seahawks, and obviously the switch at quarterback after Warford getting injured. And I believe he's out of the hospital now, so that's good to see, because that was a pretty scary moment when it happened. But yeah, Jared Goff at best is, 80%. And Jared Goff at 100%, I don't know that I pick him against Aaron Rodgers. So you might have to go at Green Bay. You look at that Seattle game, they can feel good about it, but not to sound like Bill Simmons here, but if you run that game 20 times, I don't know that they win the other 19. I think this was the perfect storm for them to get still an upset over Seattle. And I think the luck will run out against Green Bay. I'm going to go, they might keep it close a little bit more than people would think. I'll go 24-10 for that one.
All right.
Let me write that one down.
I
forgot to predict scores, so my scores are going to come off the top of my head just so everybody knows.
Hey, I had the luxury of having Robert go first, but Phil, I think now would be a good time to bring up something we've been talking about this week as loser ramifications of these predictions.
I don't know that we've picked that yet. We definitely have to know by the next round, though, because otherwise it'll be, we have talked about it. We don't know what I don't know if the winner gets anything, but the loser will definitely have some sort of punishment. So we'll have to figure out what those are. It'll be hard to do it live on here because we've thrown a few ideas out there, but I'm sure we'll pick the best one. The second game on Saturday will be Baltimore traveling to Buffalo after that big win against the Colts. They'll face Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. This was one of the games that I was wrong on last week. I had Tennessee beating Baltimore because I thought they were going to be the more physical team. I thought Baltimore had gotten a little more finesse than they should be or could be. And the exact picture that I painted last week happened, but in reverse, because it was the Ravens that outmuscled the Titans, holding Derrick Henry to about 40 yards rushing. Definitely not something anybody would have predicted going into that game. So Baltimore, this is probably going to be the game of the weekend if maybe the last game on this list doesn't steal it. I'm definitely a Bills fan through this playoff run right now, so I'm trying not to let my heart get ahead of my head. But that game that Josh Allen had last week is really hard to ignore. And, they could run out. Their magic could run out in the AFC Championship against, the Chiefs or whoever. But I think this train keeps moving. I'm going Buffalo in this. In a close one, I will go 30-27.
Oh, man, I have no confidence, just as I did in a couple of games last week. I just looked at last week's game. where the Ravens, who had a very good defensive line last year, bolstered that in the offseason by adding Calais Campbell. And it just created this sort of brick wall that we didn't see in quite a few moments this year because they did have a drop off. But Baltimore's Lamar Jackson garners his first win, and he goes up against a defense which looked down the stretch of that game against Indianapolis like they had some pretty significant holes. Jack Doyle just cut up that secondary in the fourth quarter last week. And Phillip Rivers, we know just what he brings to the table as a quarterback in the NFL. I know firsthand. He gets the brunt of a lot of criticism because he'll throw that late interception, and he got the mulligan. We all, I'm sure, have our opinions about that fumble reverse call last week.
Which, of
Phillip
course,
Rivers
wouldn't be his fault, the fumble. He completed the pass, so that wouldn't have fallen on Rivers. But I agree. That was definitely a big moment in the game.
For sure. So, and I'm sure, I'm sure we could get into that and have a whole segment on it. Phillip Rivers is a gamer. You know, he comes out every playoff game, and, you know, the best memory I have of him, I'm not going to get too far off track here, I promise, is the 07 AFC Championship game when LT tears his ACL or something to that effect, and Phillip Rivers has a similar knee problem. LT plays a snap and then sits. Phillip Rivers guts it out against the team that went 18-1 that year in 07. They lost the game, but Phillip Rivers really impressed me, and that just continued an incredible career. And he played very well, I believe, last week. I love Lamar Jackson. I do not think he plays that well, and I think the Bills win the game. It's going to be another close one. I have Buffalo 23 and Baltimore 19, and the Bills advance to the AFC Championship.
Rob, real quick before we get to you, since we did talk about Phillip Rivers right now, as a lifelong fan of him, do you think he's played his last football game?
Here's the thing. With the Colts, I think offensively they did great. They made it onto the Buffalo Bills side of the field. Every offensive drive that they had, they made it to the Bills side of the field. And the interesting part about this is that first half, when they had a chance to take that lead in that red zone, Buffalo stopped them on that fourth and goal, got the big stop, and I think that was the game changer, to be completely honest with you. The Colts had a chance to win that game. I'm not saying they didn't. I just think they needed at least one or two more pieces. Particularly, I don't know what exactly they need, but I definitely know they need one or two more pieces to become that great of a football team. But give credit to Buffalo. Let's give Josh Allen the credit he deserves. They haven't won since 1995, and they got their first playoff win. I think they're going to ride with this. I think this team is looking so good. By the way, interesting fact with the whole snow factor with the weather, Buffalo may snow as well, and Lamar Jackson has never played in the snow. I don't know if that's going to change what happens. Can Lamar Jackson, why am I blanking on the word, but adjust to the snow. And I think that's something that Lamar Jackson is a little bit concerned about. But give credit, man. Buffalo played their hearts out. They won that game fair and square. With Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, fastest man in the NFL. You guys could tell me wrong. You guys could prove me wrong. But he carried that Baltimore team and helped beat the Titans. And by the way, shout out to that Ravens defense too. They held Derrick Henry to less than 50 yards rushing, which is unbelievable. No one would ever think that, but Derrick Henry just looked tired. He looked like he overworked himself all season long, and then going in that playoff game just didn't look like himself whatsoever. And Baltimore used the gap defense to stop that run. So I think the Ravens defense and Buffalo defense, I think, is going to make this a very close game, and that's why we're going to see a very, very close score. But I think at the end of the day, I got to go with my boy Josh Allen. We're going at young QBs here in the AFC. I'm going to go with the score. I'm going to go 2017 Buffalo.
2017 Buffalo. All right. Before we jump to the
paper on there, Phil.
I got some room here still. Before we jump to the other one, I wanted your opinion as well on, do you think Phillip Rivers has played his last game?
If I might as well just address the 04 quarterback class. I think Roethlisberger played his last game. I think Rivers did not. I think he has one more year.
Okay, that'd be interesting to see. I think the Colts, we'll talk draft when the time comes, but if they do decide to go quarterback, obviously down the line, having Rivers there for one more year would definitely be something to look forward to.
By the way, before we move on, I
Mhm.
think what happened the other day in Philadelphia will encourage the Colts to bring him back, and we'll address that later.
Gotcha. All right. The first game on Sunday, a 3:00 start, kind of odd. We're so used to the 1:00, the 4:00, the 8:00. 3:00 start for this one. The Cleveland Browns continue their Cinderella run into Kansas City. I'll be the first to say here that I was wrong not picking Cleveland, and I said on the last episode, I'll say it now. I've never been so happy to be wrong. That 28-point burst in the first quarter, they did slow up a little bit. There was a minute there where Pittsburgh had it down to about 13 that you're like, if they give this up, man, just fold the franchise. Like, you had that thought in the back of your head, but they were able to hold on. Ben, as you said, did not play well, could potentially have played his last football game. That'll be for another day. So I'm very happy to see Cleveland get where they are. That being said, there's a very small chance they win this game. That chance being, I mentioned last time, Kansas City, as good as they are, really seem to have sleptwalked through about 40 to 50% of the season. So, I mean, we've seen them come back from 24 down in the playoffs last year. So even if the Browns get a jump on them like they did Pittsburgh, I don't think KC will be shaken at all. And because of that, I think the Chiefs get the win. The Browns will probably have a good account of themselves. The Chiefs are not afraid to give up points because they know they can score points. So I will go 34-28 Chiefs.
Ah, interesting. Robert, you can go in front of me first.
Oh, thank you. Well, so with this type of offense with Cleveland, I looked at two different postseason teams. I looked at Seattle and I looked at Cleveland. Cleveland does something right that Seattle couldn't this season. They can run the football. Baker Mayfield does not have to throw that much, and it causes less mistakes to happen in that offense. You saw Russell Wilson did not look like himself whatsoever. The running back core, I think what happened when they drafted Rashad Penny over Chubb that year in the draft, Rashad Penny's a bust. And they just couldn't prove that he could do anything. They had Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde as their other two running backs, couldn't get it going. Russell Wilson had to try, forced to throw the football, and the Rams identified that very quickly, and they took advantage of the pick six. And Russell Wilson, he lost to an injured Jared Goff. Now going back to the Browns have such a great dynamic duo in that running back core with Chubb and Hunt. They know how to use them. That's the thing. They know how to kill that clock when they absolutely need to. And one thing that really spun my quote that was said by Baker Mayfield when he came out of that win against Pittsburgh, the Browns are the Browns, and they really are the Browns. It's just wild to say. I think Odell comes back too after the season. I think that win showed a lot to Odell Beckham Jr. If they would have gotten blown out, I think it would have been a different story. I think that shows that he just doesn't want to be with the franchise anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Give credit to Jarvis Landry. He was targeted 8 times, and Austin Hooper was targeted 11. That shows that those are the two main guys now stepping up in the role that no one would think the offense would have. I know probably Jarvis, but not Austin Hooper. Tight ends have become more dynamic, more outgoing, and how to do both sides, like how to block and catch the football now. But the Chiefs, man, the Chiefs are a tough football team. But one stat I do have to say, the worst red zone defense. And that's something I think Cleveland could take advantage of. I don't think it's going to be enough to win this game, but their first win since 1994 in the playoffs. Talk about two AFC teams that got wins since the mid-1990s. That's crazy to say. Now with my score, I gotta do this to the Browns, but I gotta give credit to the Browns. Even if they don't win, shut them out. Like, they won their first playoff game and their team's just going to get better. 31-20 Kansas City. Pat Mahomes puts on a show. That offense just comes out booming. I think one thing that the Browns are not going to be able to stop is Pat Mahomes on the go. He can throw on the run, and it's beautiful to watch. But Kansas City's defense can struggle, and if the Browns can keep getting into that red zone, I think they have a shot to make this a little bit closer than I say, but 31-20 Kansas City.
Hey, man, this is why we have you on the show, Robert, because I did not think about Odell Beckham. That's 3 months in the rearview mirror. And I think this is the first game Cleveland's really going to miss him. And, this is a story for another day. Cleveland, are they better off not having Odell Beckham around? The numbers suggest that Baker Mayfield plays better without him. And we've seen that sort of thing before, more so in basketball, where it almost seems like a guy who's a superstar plays better without another superstar alongside him. Just weird how that works. Baker Mayfield's one of those guys, domineering personality, and also a very good distributor of the ball. As for how that pertains to Kansas City, that front four is nasty. The Chiefs have Tyrann Mathieu still playing well. I know they haven't won a game in 21 days. They haven't played their starting lineup in 21 days between this Week 16 Falcons game and then the divisional round. And I don't like it. I don't like I brought this up last week, a few years ago, last time the Cowboys made the playoffs. They rested their guys the final week of the regular season, and they looked bad after their first round bye. And it happens consistently. I mean, football is a team sport. Football is a chemistry sport. You have 11 guys. And when your quarterback doesn't play, the receivers run different routes to fit the backup quarterback. They're catching a pass that's thrown to them a different way. The running back's taking a handoff a little differently. The offensive line's blocking a little different. And you saw that when the Chargers rolled them, the same team that Kansas City beat earlier this year in their place. So with all that said, I don't like it, resting a week off. I don't like I understand it's hard to repeat as a Super Bowl champion, but I don't like just how casual they took the last month of the season. But I still got the Chiefs, man. They're just way too good. I love Cleveland. I love the story, but the buck stops here. I got the Chiefs winning 31-21.
So we all had relatively the same score even, and we all, of course, we have not disagreed on any game yet so far. I could see it happening here in the last game. Just my 2 cents on Odell Beckham. Addition by subtraction is a real thing, and I don't know that him coming back helps this team. I could see him wanting to now that he sees what this team's capable of, but if he's not ready for next year or they feel the need to move on from him, I don't think it's the end of the world for Cleveland. I think they got something special there, whether he's there or not. So it would not be a terrible thing, in my opinion, if Odell was not back. Because as you said, the numbers show that they've played better without him. Sometimes it's funny how that works. It's not telling the full story, but that might be the case with them. Who knows? The last game on the divisional round, we're lucky that we get this game. The only thing that would have made it better if it was for a trip to the Super Bowl in the conference title game, but I'll take it in the divisional round. Brady Breeze 3 in the 2020 season here in the playoffs. Nick, kick us off. Tampa Bay at New Orleans, 8 o'clock Sunday night. Who you got?
Well, if our predictions go according to plan, I think we all would accept Packers and the winner of this game for the NFC title. That doesn't sound bad either.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the game of the week. This might just be the game that cements. I know this is insane. I know Tom Brady's the GOAT, and we're going to get to that guy wearing 12 there in just a second. But one guy has more passing yards than Tom Brady. One guy has or had more passing touchdowns. Maybe when Breeze sat, I think that mantle went back to Tom Brady, who threw 40 touchdowns this year. That is insane. To consider he threw more touchdowns. I know Mahomes didn't play the season finale, but that guy, Patrick Mahomes, with all his weapons for 16 or 15 games, that's insane. So Tom Brady was great again. Drew Brees was great again. And the two quarterbacks who are combined 85 years old when they take the field are going to deuce it up most likely for the final time. I think, in my opinion, Brees goes after this year. I think Brady goes after next year. Just my personal opinion. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that, of course, in another. We have a lot to get to in future episodes, I guess. So
it's going to be a good year of podcasts. We got plenty to talk about. So
that's right. Yeah. So we'll move that to the next time. So Tampa's defense. I mean, I know Heineke played his Heine off. I mean, that guy was awesome, over 300 yards for Washington. But Tampa's secondary, I know they have the best run defense in the NFL, but that did not look all that impressive last week against Washington. Tom Brady was excellent, so he hung on to the win. And we know the Saints swept the Bucs earlier this year. I'm sure Robert will go a little more into exactly what those games look like. But with all that said, I have just one argument against picking the Saints here, and that is that guy, Tom Brady. I just, looking at this throughout the week, it is almost impossible to pick against that guy. And I refuse to pick him this week. I know the Saints carved him up both times. I know New Orleans, if they have Drew Brees all year, I think that this team is the number 1 seed potentially. I have Tampa in overtime over New Orleans, 27-21.
21 in OT, calling your shot with the OT. That's a good one. I think we can agree that New Orleans, like Drew Brees is probably gone after this year. A lot of reports he wanted to be gone after last year. I think it was just the way they were knocked out of the playoffs. They were able to convince him to come back. And I know not beating a team 3 times in 1 year is a real thing. Like, I totally see that, but that would make sense to me if one of the first 2 games were even close, and they really weren't for the most part.
Nope.
New Orleans, for whatever reason, has this figured out, and there is this weird stigma in Tampa. Nick, you might remember we've talked about it a month or 2 ago. Half the team feels that this year's Super Bowl or bust, and for whatever reason, the other half doesn't. So they might not all be in go now mode. Seeing Mike Evans on the field this past week was good news because we didn't know for sure if he was going to play. He should be fine for this one. Also, the Saints obviously getting their firepower back with Michael Thomas coming back into the game, as we saw him get in the slime zone on Nickelodeon over the past weekend. Latavius Murray played great to back up Alvin Kamara, who also had a great game. I know it's very hard to pick against Brady, but I've been doing it all my life, so I might as well do it one last time. I'm going the Saints for the 3-game sweep in 2020. And Drew Brees rides off into the sunset. His career lasts at least one more game as he gets his NFC Championship game. I don't really have a score for this one because I can't really – I'm going to bypass my score for this one, but I am going the Saints.
Fair enough.
Come on, guys. We're talking about – okay, I was doubting Tom Brady last week.
Yeah, man. What are you doing shaking your head?
Okay, wait, 1 second. First of all, I didn't know Alex Smith wasn't going to start that game. And then they put in Taylor Heineke, who amazes everybody somehow. That man kept them in the game somehow, and the defense did as well. But there was also no film on Taylor Heineke whatsoever going into that game. But give credit to the Washington football team. They have a bright future ahead of them. But the Buccaneers, to end the season, looked really good. And 5-0, won the game against the Redskins. Now they go into a game where Tom Brady has found his connection with Antonio Brown. He knows that Mike Evans is the guy. Like, he knows he's that guy. He's the main wide receiver. They got Scotty Miller, Chris Godwin, and good old Antonio Brown, who he averages 10.5 yards a catch every time Brady targets him and has had 5 touchdowns in the last, I think, 4 games, if I'm incorrect. I'm sorry. I think that's right. But Antonio Brown has been that missing piece that Tom Brady has needed. And Ronald Jones was out in this playoff game. He got hurt right before the game. But this is why they have Fournette. Fournette was that type of guy to come in, step in the game, and play against Washington and play great. Now we look at the Saints. They went against the Bears. Bears, not a great team. Mitch Trubisky might have played his last game for the Chicago Bears. Just pointing that out there, but did not look good. I just want to put that on the record.
Might be his last game as a starter. That's another thing I'd like to point out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go. See, now but with the Saints, their offense, I think we're looking at 2 offenses that are going to kill the field this week. It's going to be an offensive battle. One thing that has really caught my eye with the Buccaneers, though, is Winfield Jr., the rookie. Really came out of nowhere. I didn't think he was going to make as big as an impact, but he really does when he's on that football field. I get they lost the last 2 games. They lost in week 1 and week 9. One of them, losing by double digits, both losing by double digits, and one getting, I guess you could consider both a blowout, but I wouldn't say week 1 was as much of a blowout as week 9. I don't think it's going to be third time's the charm for the Saints. I think it's going to go to the Buccaneers. I am going to disagree with you guys, and it's going to be 33-30 Buccaneers. I am wearing the jersey, and I'm wearing the red for the Bucs. I think this is going to be Brady's time to shine. I think Drew Brees is going to play his last game, and Brady's going to be playing Aaron Rodgers in that NFC Championship game.
Yeah, that looked like 49er red, by the way.
Yeah, funny how that works. It's really with the NFC Championship game. Where are they going to get treated to Brees and Brady, or I'm sorry, Brees and Rodgers, or Rodgers and Brees, as long as the Rams don't screw it up. So as long as we're not stuck with Goff in that high-profile game again, I think the NFC is going to come out winners for sure. Question about this Brady jersey. This clearly looks new. It's the Nike style, not the Reebok style. Who doesn't already have a Brady jersey that wants one? I mean, you've been able to buy them for close to 30 years now. So how are you just now getting your Brady jersey?
Oh, I've had this for a while. I mean, I've held on to it. I really want to – I feel like I got to get a Buccaneers one. I feel like that's what's got to add on to the collection of what I want. But for a Niners jersey right now, I got a Nick Bosa jersey sitting in my closet, but he's hurt. So
yeah,
I can't really wear that one as much right now until he comes back. Speaking of, he could be traded for Deshaun Watson right now. So
you never know. Speaking of 49ers, I got one last nugget for you before you go. You said you think Lamar Jackson's the fastest guy in the league? Well, the top two recorded times as far as pure speed in the league this year, 1 and 2 happened from the same player, and it was none other than 49ers running back Raheem Mostert. So that is my pick for the fastest guy in the league, straight out of New Smyrna Beach, Florida. So, yeah, Raheem's the hometown guy here. I got to go with that. Guys, any parting words before we get out of here?
I think Tyreek Hill's the fastest player in the game.
Not a bad choice whatsoever. So that's good too.
Apparently Terrell Owens is faster than him, but that's a whole other thing.
I'm sure he thinks that. I have no problem believing that he thinks that.
I think fastest quarterback though, you got to go Lamar Jackson. But
yeah.
Hey, the Ravens. So one thing I didn't mention, we go with some of the oldest quarterbacks in the NFC, and Jared Goff's the youngest. We go from like 40s to like mid 20s in the AFC. It's really funny how that works out.
Yeah.
I really like to see that young quarterbacks are making their ways in. Like, no one thought Lamar Jackson was going to win like a playoff game this young. No one thought Josh Allen would. A lot of people just don't think young quarterbacks can get the job done. They think someone that's been in the league for maybe like 8-9 years, maybe even say 7, are going to get the wins more than they would. But man, give credit to the AFC, man. Young talent's developing, and it's just looking phenomenal. Baker Mayfield is the oldest, by the way. Fun fact.
I was going to say, you want to talk about a youth movement. The oldest AFC quarterback remaining is actually Baker Mayfield. So the young guys are coming, and it's going to be great to see. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks, Rob and Nick, for dropping some knowledge on us today. Everybody enjoy the divisional round, and we'll see you next week.